Are you ready to discover the gritty reality of hygiene in the Old West? Were the cowboys and pioneers really as grubby and foul-smelling as the movies make them out to be? In this video, we'll answer these burning questions and take you on a wild ride through the world of Old West hygiene. From bathing in rivers to using animal fat as soap, we'll uncover the unique and often bizarre ways that people tried to stay clean in a time when modern sanitation was a luxury. But be warned, some of the stories may shock you. So hold on tight as we journey back in time to explore the uncharted territory of hygiene in the Wild West. Get ready to learn, laugh, and maybe even hold your nose a time or two. In the 1800s, cleanliness and hygiene practices were not as common or as well understood as they are today. Even if people had access to clean water in the old days, it took some convincing for everyone to believe that cleanliness is indeed next to godliness, as preacher John Wesley said back in 1791. Author David Derry notes that in the early 1800s, bathing was believed to wash away protective oils that were necessary for healthy skin. Not only until 1887 did manuals like the Happy Home Guide explain that everyone should bathe the whole surface of the body with good soap and water at least once a week. It's interesting to note that during this time, soap was typically made from animal fat and lye. And it was not until the development of what Harvard University calls modern germ theory between 1870 and 1900 that people began to understand the importance of cleanliness in preventing the spread of disease. Hygiene practices during the Wild West era were often crude and difficult due to the lack of infrastructure and resources. Washing dishes was a particularly challenging task, as most pioneers used buckets, hauling in water, warming it to near scalding temperatures, and using harsh, homemade lye soap. Busy public eating houses, however, rarely took the time to wash the dishes, leading to unsanitary conditions that could spread disease. The Wild West was a time and place in history that was characterized by many unique and interesting aspects. One such aspect was the dusty environment that was prevalent throughout the region. Dust storms and heavy winds would often pick up dust and send large clouds into the air and into homes, making it difficult for settlers to keep their living spaces clean and healthy. The dust was not just a nuisance to the settlers, but also to their livestock. Sarah Atherton, who traveled with her husband Jed and their children to the American West, described the journey as one filled with dust. She recounted how her eyes burned terribly due to the dust that was everywhere. Similarly, Sarah Raymond Herndon, who traveled from Missouri to Montana Territory during the late 1860s, described the dust as being so bad that it was almost knee-deep in some places. When the group stopped for the night, the boys' faces were covered with dust, and it filled their noses and eyes. It took plenty of water to keep their faces clean. Another curious aspect of hygiene in the Wild West was the prevalence of spitting. Saloons were widespread throughout the western frontier, and they all had spittoons and cuspidors in the front of the bar. Men who chewed tobacco would often spit, and it would end up on the floor. The spit often became covered with sawdust, which caused people to come down with pneumonia and tuberculosis. This became a significant issue for those who rented the floors of saloons to camp for the night. Many would sleep on the floors that were covered with germs and bacteria. To prevent these serious diseases, many places banned spitting. If you were caught spitting on the train platforms or in the train stations, it was punishable with a $500 fine, a year in prison, or both. Cholera and other diseases were also major problems in the Wild West. Laundry, plumbing, and dishwashing often took place in the water that was also used for drinking. This made it very common for the disease to spread through camps and settlements. During the 19th century, a group of Mormon migrants came down with cholera, and they saw it as a punishment from God. The disease also wiped out a large number of Native Americans. While this was a widespread condition, it didn't claim as many Native lives as smallpox did. Back then, no disease in a camp was a miracle, and it all had to do with poor hygiene and dirty water. On a lighter note, people in the Wild West used whiskey and castor oil for hair care. Whiskey was used for a number of things, including disinfecting and pain relief. People would combine whiskey, castor oil, and lavender to wash their hair. After washing their hair, they would wash it out with rainwater or with water softened with borax. Women would often comb their hair thoroughly, then curl it using heated pencils. Interestingly, women were often cleaner than men in the Wild West. Cowboys, soldiers, and other men often went long periods of time without bathing, especially during the winter months. Women, on the other hand, washed their faces every morning and often went to a spring or a stream to wash their faces and take a drink. Although they had no privacy, they were much cleaner than men. Women also washed their clothes more often than men, as they understood the importance of good hygiene and the impact it could have on their health. Soldiers and cowboys, on the other hand, didn't have much time and usually only had one set of clothes. When they washed their clothes in a stream or river, it was nothing, which contributed to the poor hygiene conditions in the Wild West. During the 1800s, people did not have a thorough understanding of how germs were spread, and practices like eating from the same plate or drinking from the same cup were common. It wasn't until the Happy Home Health Guide was published in the late 1800s that people were informed about the spread of germs and how to prevent it. The development of antiperspirants and deodorants in the late 1800s and early 1900s also marked a turning point in personal hygiene practices. Mom deodorant, made from a waxy cream and zinc oxide, was introduced in 1888, followed by Zidonia in 1893 and Everdry in 1903. It's interesting to note that many people, especially women, tried masking body odor with perfume before these products became widely available. Access to indoor plumbing was also a luxury that many people did not have until the late 1800s and early 1900s. While indoor plumbing was available in New York City in 1842, it wasn't until the 1870s that at least some kitchens featured a hand pump at the sink. By 1920, only 1% of homes in the US could afford any kind of indoor plumbing at all. The lack of indoor plumbing meant that going to the bathroom was often an unpleasant experience, and toilet paper was not widely available until the early 1900s. According to PBS, less abrasive toilet paper was in use by 1907, but not everyone could afford or access toilet paper back in the day. Despite the challenges of maintaining cleanliness and hygiene in the 1800s, people found creative ways to stay clean. Travelers during the 1800s eventually found the need for more regular cleansing baths, and public baths began to emerge in cities across the country. Common bathhouses with private tubs were available in some areas, while Turkish baths, similar to today's saunas, were popular in larger cities. In 1890, James Lick opened a luxurious bathhouse in San Francisco that remained in business until 1919. 9 amazing facts you should know. Number 1. Soap was not widely available or affordable, particularly in rural areas. Many people made their own soap using animal fat and lye, but this was a time-consuming and difficult process. Number 2. Toothbrushes and toothpaste were not commonly used in the Old West. People often used baking soda, salt, or even charcoal to clean their teeth. Number 3. Men often grew beards and mustaches, partly as a way to hide dental issues such as missing teeth, which were common due to poor oral hygiene. Number 4. Personal hygiene was not a high priority for many people living in the Old West. This was due in part to the fact that cleanliness was often associated with the upper class and was seen as unnecessary or even frivolous by some. Number 5. Outhouses or pit latrines were commonly used for sanitation, but they often were not well maintained or cleaned regularly. This led to unsanitary conditions and the spread of disease. Number 6. Women often faced challenges with menstrual hygiene, as disposable pads and tampons were not available. Instead, they used rags or other makeshift materials. Number 7. Medical professionals of the time recognized the importance of hygiene in preventing disease and infection. Doctors and nurses often emphasized the importance of cleanliness and proper sanitation, particularly during times of epidemic outbreaks. Number 8. Some towns and settlements had communal bathhouses or public wells to provide access to clean water and bathing facilities. Number 9. Personal hygiene products such as deodorant, shampoo, or shaving cream did not exist in their modern form during the Old West. As you've just witnessed, the Old West was full of fascinating stories and incredible characters. And what better way to capture the beauty and essence of this time than through photographs? That's why we put together a collection of the best photographs of beauties of the Old West. So if you want to see some truly stunning images and learn more about the women who helped shape this incredible era, make sure to click on the link and watch our video. You won't be disappointed.